Hello there, and welcome to the Dr. Grant Show. My name is Dr. Grant Van Albrick, and I am the founder and CEO of Scared So What Limited, a former sales leader and the first doctor in sales transformation in the world. I spent 25 years in global hospitality selling all over the world, and it's been so nice to be here with you. Today, we've got a great show. I've got some excellent friends here, as always, my hosts, but we've got a very special guest. Andy Champion is with us, Global Head of Enterprise Sales. So I can't wait to actually find out all about him. But enough about me. Today, I'd like to turn it over to my co host, and I'd love to ask Mark Sabatini to introduce himself. Mark, take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you, Grant. Mark Sabatini here. I'm a consultant that focuses on go-to-market transformation, primarily with companies that are looking to get started in the United States. So companies that are successful in Europe, for example, that want to expand into the US market, helping to transform that go-to-market to ensure a higher rate of success. I also do quite a bit of work with chief revenue officers, education for chief revenue officers, coaching, and I'm a part of the CRO collective, and we do training and education for CROs.
That is outstanding. And it's so great to have you again here, Mark. It's good to see you. As if I didn't mention, today's episode is on sales transformation starts with people. And for your host today, it's going to be none other than Alex Abbott. Alex, do you want to introduce yourself and take it away?
I do. Very kind. Thank you. So my name's Alex Abbott, founder of Sapiro, and we help teams in relationship building roles close the conversation gap, between lots of activity and creating meaningful commercial conversations. So with that, Andy, do you want to say a few words before we get into the themes? Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Delighted to. Hello, everyone. I have been in and around sales and marketing technology for just over 25 years now. I know my face doesn't show the ages, but trust me, I have the scars. I have made all of the mistakes and more. And I've been blessed to learn from them across companies large and small. Mark, it's interesting. You talk about your experience predominantly being European organizations wanting to take advantage of a very significant market in the US and the Americas. Interestingly, a lot of my time working in the world of tech has been spent helping American companies come to Europe, right? Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And understanding that actually when we talk about Europe, it's not just one country. It actually is a tapestry of many different countries with really influential cultures. And those cultures influence how people think and make decisions. And so, there's a nice juxtaposition here. In my current role, I lead the enterprise sales team at Atlassian. So I have people in the Americas, in India, across Asia Pacific, and across here in Europe, where I'm speaking to you from today. Outside of my full-time role, I also have enjoyed doing some advisory work for private equity firms. So again, helping them in two phases. Number one, due diligence, looking at potential investments, understanding the go-to-market model, what the upside might be. But then also after the investment, helping them really capitalize on that and work out what is their strategy and, to today's topic, what needs to transform.
Yeah. So Andy and I go back to 2009. We were just chatting before the show. It's 2009. So Andy hired me into an enterprise sales role when I was still figuring out what good really looked like with complex B2B sales. And what stood out wasn't just kind of, the performance expectations. It was really the way that Andy led. So he invested in me in terms of, how I thought, how I showed up, and how I learned from failure. And I was fortunate enough to have his support transitioning from that individual contributor into a leadership role. And so for anyone who's made that shift, they know all too well how strong or how important it is to have strong mentorship. So when I saw your post today, Andy, talking about culture and coaching and how those two are fundamental to really accelerating transformation, it really felt like the perfect place for us to begin the conversation. So why don't you tell us a bit more about, you know, your thoughts, your experience, and why culture and coaching is so important to you when leading transformations?
So look, there are plenty of smart people out there in the world that I think have said words to this effect. One of them is Richard Branson. You know, Richard Branson always talked about he would invest in his people first, because he knew that if he hired the best people and enabled them and empowered them, they would deliver an exceptional customer experience. You know, I started my career in the military. I spent 6 years in the British Army as an officer, and I think a lot of the principles in terms of how I try or how I aspire to lead today were really things that shaped me from Sandhurst. So I am very big on trust. I start from a position of trust, because I know that the results that I need to deliver, whether it's here at Atlassian or elsewhere that I've been, are always delivered through and with people, right? In my role as a sales leader, actually, the vast majority of time, it's not me that is interfacing, speaking with, having Zoom meetings, in-person meetings with our customers. It's my people. And for me to affect change, I need to lead that change through them. And the most important thing I have come to learn in that equation is trust. And trust is earned over time, and it's lost in a careless moment. And, you know, Colin Powell said it, the only currency that matters in leadership is trust. And that's why I am so big on creating environments where trust can flourish, because I believe in that environments, there are a lot of downstream things that are really important to transformation that we'll talk about. But at the heart of it, it's about trust.
Yeah. Where do you think leaders tend to underestimate their role in shaping, you know, developing trust?
I can tell you some of the mistakes I made when I first moved into leadership. Now, you know, I'd fortunately got a few years under my belt by the time we met, but you know, when I should have known better, but one of the biggest mistakes I made when I was appointed to a first-line leadership role in my first commercial role was I felt that somehow I would be more effective if I was my team member's best friend, right? And I felt that would create this culture of trust. And unfortunately, what I found pretty quickly was, you know, if you're seeking approval, then it's really hard to have the tough conversations. It's really hard to give people frank and honest feedback.
Yeah.
And actually, most of the time, people want frank and honest feedback from their leaders. What am I doing right? What is expected of me? How can I improve? And when you're seeking that approval to drive approval, not trust, the behaviors and the mechanics in that relationship are very, very different. Now, I'm not suggesting that all leaders make that same mistake, but I know it's a relatively common for first-time leaders. And so it's about, you know, how can you drive support? How can you engender trust? And I think one of the most important things is to set very clear expectations. Alex, this is what is expected in your role. On a forecast call, this is what I expect you to understand. Here is, if you like, a script of how you'll talk through your worst case, your best case, your most likely, so that you know exactly how to turn up and you're given every opportunity to succeed. And then, you know, if that doesn't go right, just provide the feedback. And for me, that's a really fundamental part of building trust versus approval.
Yeah.
I actually love that. Can I just jump in there? I love that portion. By the way, can I say thank you for your service? As a fellow veteran and service member myself, thank you, brother to brother, for doing that. That's a sacrifice, and I appreciate you for doing that. I would love to say, though, what you just said about the part of coming back to and giving them that positive feedback, whether it's positive or negative or whatever, it's the honest, truthful feedback. And that is a pivotal moment within leadership. And I think I can share this with you as we both have gone through military service. There's a moment when we first get in, it's about breaking down, and it's about conditioning the mindset in the early moments to actually get us to a become adults, right? Be responsible and learn how to follow rules and regulations together. But then there's a level setting playing field of everybody's on the same line, right? That's where the team foundation is started. Now, the military is obviously a hard extreme over here, but it works, and it's worked for centuries. And so what I can see with you in going in a very non-militant way, but a very positive, trusting way to build that reinforcement, one of the best things you do is when somebody does fall or when somebody doesn't get it right, it's how do you pick them back up, right? And I can sense that. You said that that's one of the most important parts, and you're absolutely right. And I can tell you from every bit of academic rigor and support, that pulls through every time. So I'm really proud that you're actually leading with that and saying that for the leaders who are on this call and who will be watching this afterwards. Thank you for that. It's the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's really simple. Like 99.98% of the people I've ever worked with want to do a brilliant job.
Yeah.
They simply want, we all want to do a good job.
Mm-hmm.
And for those that aren't, those very small number of exceptions, that becomes pretty clear pretty quick. But the vast majority of people across the full bell curve of performance, from the highest performers to maybe those that are struggling, they want to do well.
Yeah.
And the difference between those that are performing highly versus those that are perhaps towards that middle of the performance bell curve, when you look at sales attainment, I tell you what it is. They just haven't quite figured out what good looks like. And so as a leader, if you can look to your high performers and kind of encapsulate the key behaviors, the key value messaging, the key operational rhythms, and then expose that bulk of people in the middle
Mm-hmm.
to what great looks like, and you create an environment where they feel safe to try to change, where they feel supported, where perhaps when they have a little stumble, you swoop in and pick them up and help them to get back on track. Do you know what? That's the thing that drives transformation at scale.
Yeah.
Especially since the others around will see how you treat that individual and how you're coaching that individual. And as you said earlier, the common currency is trust. And when you think about leadership today, we many times we talk about treating everyone the same differently, right? It's because every single individual is different. They have different goals, aspirations for themselves. They handle failure differently, success differently. So it's very important for us to understand each individual. Because if we get to a point where there is transformation and change, we want to know how do we prepare everybody to accept that change and not be resisting it. Because the quiet resistance will kill any momentum that we have in an organization. But centering back on trust, it's across our relationships, it's across the people that we have reporting to us, people that we're working for. Trust is that core that goes around this. And I think if we focus on helping everyone to see that we are there for them, now let's go get the job done, right? You build that trust because each person on the team has different strengths and weaknesses that we have to manage. And, I think if you set the table that way, you can not only identify the people who, I think you may have said, Andy, that they're not looking to try very hard, like that 1%. To me, it's understanding the people that want to learn, right? Change is happening at such a rapid pace today. It's important for us to set up processes within the work environment for us to understand how people learn, how do they want to learn, And then if we can separate people that are just done learning, it really helps us to understand where we can grow, because in that audience, if there are people who have trouble learning, they want to learn, they have trouble learning, it's easier for us to then spend more time to help them learn, right? They may not be hitting their sales numbers because they're not learning a couple of key steps. So perhaps that's just some extra work that we do to help them get there. But the key piece that we're building the trust around is understanding that they want to learn. Where do they want to get to? And help them understand that we want to be the individual to help them get there.
I remember as I was transitioning into that leadership role, and I really wanted to please, and I was riding shotgun on every deal, burning myself out, and I think you recognise that, Andy, and offered counsel, offered coaching. A big part of having those conversations requires that trust, and without that trust, it can be very difficult in order to have those quite raw conversations that need to happen in order for the individual to grow. And whether it's that, or whether it's you kind of calling me out and saying, I've noticed that you're not very present, and you seem somewhat distracted in certain situations.
Did he say that to you?
Yeah.
Go, Andy. Look at his smile. He didn't realize that would be broadcast live to the world later.
I didn't realize that was going to come up today, but that's okay.
But
This is reality TV.
as you're developing leadership qualities in me, I need to be demonstrating those qualities myself in order to lead by example with my team. And it's incredibly important to be 100% present and actively listening to your team.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think a lot of these podcasts is about how can we perhaps help people with a few pointers that they might want to go and look at that could be helpful to them. So some ideas here on how do you build trust. I'm a huge fan of situational leadership. And for anybody that's not familiar with that, I'd really encourage you to go and have a look at that. Situational leadership in a nutshell is all about treating people, meeting people where they are on their journey of learning. And so somebody that is, an elite athlete that has perhaps performed in that particular area, that particular event many, many times and proven themselves, your approach to how you lead and coach and support them is very different from somebody doing, I don't know, a bobsleigh, right, for the first time. You've got to be way more directive. Situational leadership is brilliant. I use it every single day. Some will judge on whether I do it effectively or not, but it's something that has been really, really helpful to me. The second thing that I would say is, as a leader, it's your job to be humble and to be curious.
Yeah.
Right? To understand what sits behind this behavior. And then the third thing that I'd say that is something that is really helpful for building trust is actually to not worry about big, bold statements. But those will generally take care of themselves, the big events, the being up on stage, whatever it might be. What really matters is how you turn up every single day. Those micro moments. Turning up for a one-to-one. Do you turn up on time? Are you organized? Are you structured? Do you remember the wife or the husband's name? Do you remember something about their kids? Do you ask how their week has gone? Those are the moments where trust is really built.
Yeah,
you do that, the big stuff will take care of itself.
Yeah,
couldn't agree more.
Let me just call out, because we've got some nice comments coming through, Grant. I don't know if you're able to put a couple up on the screen, but Andy, some familiar faces for you and I. Ritesh Basra, thank you, Andy and Alex, for your wisdom. Two of the best leaders I had the privilege to learn from. Thank you, Ritesh. Great to see you. Chris Gill. Well, hello, Alex and Andy. Got notified and had to join. And we've got Ross Green. Hi, Ross. Not familiar with Ross. Mark. Great to see Mark at work. And
Ritesh.
and Louis Fernandez. Great to see you, Louis. Hope you're doing well.
Ritesh had a comment as well. Thank you, Andy and Alex, for your wisdom. Two of the best leaders I had the privilege to learn from. Wow. Who paid them? Funny.
So look, for anyone listening, please, feel free to throw some questions in the chat, in the comments on the LinkedIn event. We'll see them come up here on the restream, and we'll certainly do our best to answer them.
I do have a question, if I could ask, Alex. I get this question a lot from leaders that I'm working with, and especially in today's modern sales. There are a lot of sales teams that have legacy members, right? We all seen them, people that have been there for 20, 30, 40 years, and some of them are superstars, just absolutely wonderful. But when you talk with some of the leadership, there are some members that are just there to get a paycheck, and it shows. And I wonder, Andy, what would you share with us with your advice as a leader? How do you deal with that?
Here's how I would approach that. Let's try it on for size and see if it works. The first principle is, as a leader, I do not own the culture. It actually sounds weird, but I don't own the culture. Yeah. What I am responsible for is creating the environment in which the culture can grow. So if you like, the analogy is, I'm like the guy or girl that needs to build a greenhouse. But then how people, the plants that are in there, flourish and grow within that environment is kind of somewhat self-determined by the individual themselves, but also the other people around them. And so in that environment, what I would be looking at are, how do we level set what our expectations are? What are our cultural values? How are we going to turn up for and with one another? How are we collectively going to hold each other accountable for that? And how are we going to identify when we turn up and we are aligned to our values and contributing to the culture? And look, on some days, when we don't turn up quite as well, how are we doing things that might negatively impact that culture? And so in this situation, I think when you agree those norms, if people are operating outside of those norms, then it is an opportunity for peer feedback. Yeah. Or ultimately, if you need to step in as a leader to provide that feedback, it's a great opportunity to help use the SBI framework, another of my favorite frameworks. So being specific about the behavior you've observed, describing the impact, and then asking the individual, hey, did you notice? Or giving them an opportunity to then talk about that observation that you shared with them.
Yeah.
And in some cases, people will change. In many cases, people will change. As I say, my experience of humanity is broadly, we want to do good work and be valued by our peers and communities. There are, I've dealt with it once in my career, where I was not able to get an individual to a place where they're aligned with the values of the organization. And ultimately, even though this person was a very, very high performer, we agreed that they might be happier in a different role in a different organization.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, because the behavioral impact, the cultural impact of negative behavior is a little bit like dropping poison into a well that we all drink from. So I do believe very strongly in values. I do believe very strongly in culture. And I'm okay with having honest conversations about what we collectively want the culture to be and how collectively we're going to hold ourselves and the rest of our colleagues accountable to, seeing that evolve and grow over time.
Yeah. Thank you. Incredible feedback.
Because you can only create the environment to allow your team, your leaders to flourish in that environment. I think the greenhouse analogy is is a great one, because no matter how hard you work at creating that environment, some just won't want to flourish in it, and that, I guess that's okay. But how do you manage that? And perhaps this is one for you, Grant. But how do you manage that? I guess chasm or difference between what leadership is creating, what the organization wants,
Mm-hmm.
and the people, and their ability or inability to change the way that they're behaving to support that mission, that culture.
Well, I definitely have a thought on that, but I don't know if you want our guest Andy. Do you want to take that?
I think I've talked way too much already, so please.
You're so funny. Thank you. Well, what you're talking about, Alex, is exactly why, I did the research on personal change and the individual. And I think we've all been talking about that for quite a while. But if you look at where situations with trust and leaderships, and, our role is to be a leader for all people and all members. But how do you actually involve people when there's a loss of trust? And I think Sue, in our listeners, has this as well too. Poor decision making or decision avoidance to me is a big trust killer in leaders. I work with change, and I'm just putting her question up. Change sponsors, the damage can be longitudinal or latitudinal. Where do you think leaders get stuck here? And she's asking to Andy, and I'm just going to give my 2 cents on this and come back to you, Andy, as well, because I think it answers the question. A lot of my work has been around how do I help salespeople process the change that they're going through? Okay. And what I concluded was the art of selling in itself is instigating change. Think about that for a moment. In our businesses, we have products and services, we have price points, we have revenue management, we have revenue leaders. They tell us what we're supposed to be doing. They tell us exactly where we're supposed to push and where we're supposed to drive. And then the sales force's job is to go out and do just that. And what we've witnessed thousands of times over around the world is that salespeople will pick up their agendas, they will pick up their products, they will pick up their services, whatever the specials of the day are, and they go out and they just dump. It's product dump. It is as fast as we can go. And when that doesn't work, they come back. And then there's the poor decision making that starts to happen. There's the knee-jerk reactions that start to happen. But there's what really, truly is happening underneath is the personal change dilemma. Okay? Mm-hmm. And as leaders, we haven't been taught how to manage personal change for ourselves. So therefore, how do we expect ourselves to teach them how to manage the change for themselves? And that's where I wrote my first book, Transforming Sales Management. How do you lead sales teams through personal change, right? If you understand that selling is instigating change, then you need to learn how to manage that for yourself and your sales teams. And that's part of our responsibility as leaders, to listen, as Andy is rightfully saying, to listen, to coach, to guide. But then also remember, as soon as we do learn that process, we've got a counterpart over at our customer. And then we've got a counter account manager or sales rep that we're selling into. We should be helping them process the change themselves, because that person has to turn around and go sell our services internally, especially in today's world, to get multiple decision makers and to get that sale to actually move forward. They have the same reverse pressure. And I think that is what is so critically important before we allow people to go into that poor decision making, Sue, as you're rightfully bringing up. It's our responsibility as leaders to actually coach them, guide them, listen to them, and to your point, Alex, give them time to reflect. Sometimes it's so fast. In today's sales environment, it's the fire hose pointed at your face. Drink somehow. And it's just so hard, right? Give them that time to think out loud and to say, well, what could I do? And to Andy's point, don't chastise them if they make a poor decision. Be there to safeguard them and say, what else could you do? And what would happen if you did that? Andy, could you help me here and take it to your thoughts?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think with the poor decision making, look, as a leader, as a human being, I make mistakes every single day. I try not to repeat the same mistake more than once.
Yeah.
So I try and look at what could I have done better. And I promise you now, I'm well into my 50s, and I am still, I would like to think, growing every single day as a leader. I don't think I'm even close to, to mastering this thing. And that's the beautiful thing about human life, is that the person we are today doesn't need to be the person we are tomorrow or next week. We can affect change.
Yeah.
So to Sue's point, when it comes to bad decisions, if you've made a poor decision or a decision you need to unwind as a leader, own it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Just own it, right? And be honest about it. And you know what? Most of the time people will understand. We deal in a world where we have incomplete information and we have to make judgments every single day. And so it's okay to get some of those wrong. And it's really important when you do that, not to obfuscate, but to own it.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there comes a point where if you make too many poor decisions in a row, it is going to undermine that trust that I spoke about. And then I think you got to dig into, well, why is that poor decisioning taking place? Have you, are you rushing? Do you have incomplete information? One of the things that can help with that, I've always found, is to build brilliant people around you. And then as a leader, to have the humility to understand that your job is actually not always to make the decisions. Your job is to bring together people in an environment where they can have a discussion, to come up with the different ideas, to debate the different options, and then ultimately to decide and align around an option that sometimes not everybody will agree with. But harness the intelligence. No one of us is as smart as all of us. Your job as a leader is not to be the smartest person in the room. Never forget that.
Yeah.
Putting that ego to one side allows you to de-risk the chance that you will make a poor decision. Because guess what? If it does turn out to be a decision that wasn't perfect, you've made it collectively.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, you're sharing the burden of decision making.
But still taking ownership at that point, so that the team sees that the buck stops with you. The other piece of this that's been brought up here is we, especially in technology sales, as you know, Andy, the rapid rate of change that's going on right now. It's important for us to share with our teams that our potential customers, like, this is part of their problem, is that the change is happening so fast. They've procured items that are on a 2-3 year contract, and they don't know how to get out of it. They don't know how to change. They're going to be coming at you with new buying rules that say, we don't take a long-term contract anymore. How do I demonstrate that I've proven the outcomes that my solution can do over time to overcome that objection? This is all part of that learning process, and it's compounded because on your team, the team has to learn all these new products and all the changes to the products. But when they now face the buyers, it's about the outcomes, and it's putting the hat on of, I have to put myself in each one of those organizations to understand how the outcomes solve very dynamic challenges that are happening in each one of these organizations. That's a lot of work. That's more work than most senior enterprise salespeople have had to deal with in their career. And it takes a lot. So it's a whole new form of leadership that we all have to bring to the table.
So and this is for everyone, where do transformations most often lose momentum? And what's the earliest signal that you think leaders miss?
Well, can I ask an earlier question before that? Hang on to that.
Okay.
Andy, what is the difference between change and transformation? Sorry, I had to.
Yeah.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah. So for me, I would describe transformation as it has an element of scale. It has an element of repeatability. It has an element of sustainability. It takes place over a period of time.
Yeah.
It is organized. And by the way, it does need to evolve, right? Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Mike Tyson, brilliant. We've all got a great plan.
Yeah.
But the consistent part of it for me about transformation is it's systemic. It is planned, it's structured, it's organized, it takes place at scale, and it's done in an orderly manner where we bring the entire organization with us.
Yeah.
And you can only transform a small number of things at a time. You can change a lot of things.
Good. Yeah.
But you cannot transform a lot of things concurrently.
I'm excited, Alex. This guest is phenomenal. And Andy, if I could give you a high distinction, you just got it. And I did that on purpose, Andy, and I'm so sorry. But, Alex set you up for a wonderful question, and so many people get this wrong. In academia, if you look at what does it mean to change? Well, to change means that you can always go back. You can always go back. If we change something and we don't like it, we can always go backwards. But to transform means that you can only go forward. And the example we use is a caterpillar. So a caterpillar doesn't change to become a better caterpillar. It goes through that chaos in that cocoon. It actually has to fight, has to struggle, right? Things get nasty for a little bit, and it's such as life. But then when it does break free, there's no going back whatsoever. And I think we get that wrong so much because transformation is overly used out there in the world. It's used for everything now. Business transformation, sales transformation, HR transformation, digital transformation. And you want to just ask people, what exactly are you referencing and what are you meaning? And you got it right, Andy. You've got to focus on the smaller task items to say, what are we going to transform so that we don't fall back? And here's where executive suites really get this wrong. If we're just doing change management, here's what happens. The communication goes out, CEO, C-suite, senior sales officer, whoever, stamps it off. Comms person or secretary pushes it out to the organization, and we all go, hey, we did it. Salesforce was just launched. It's going to be wonderful. Everything's done. CIO's thinking, yeah, great. Whew, I get to keep my bonus. I actually launched it on time. When the truth of the matter is, the entire Salesforce is sitting there going, yeah, I don't understand this. What does this mean for me? Do I have to use this? I'm not going to do this. I'm going to wait until somebody pushes me. Let's see, Andy's over in England, so I'm over in Singapore. Until he actually starts to push my buttons, I'll just do everything the way I've been doing, right? That's where we fail. That's not transformation. And you got it so right, Andy. And I just wanted to say thank you for that, because it also shows the integrity of the guests we have on the show, which is phenomenal. So I go hands up to you. Bravo. Fantastic. And I'm sorry I interrupted you, Alex. You had another great question.
Well, no, of course. And it's, I guess I've got the benefit of working directly with Andy for many years across two organizations. And, you use Salesforce implementation as an example. The difficulty of transformation is, I think, exponentially more difficult when you're really trying to transform people and individuals and the way they think, the way they work, the way they sell, so that it sticks.
And again, if people are still listening and maybe writing down, ideas and tips that they want to try on for size, when you ask, where did transformations fall down? I'd pivot that and say, one thing I've found in every single transformation, without exception, everyone that's worked, and actually many that haven't worked, what's been missing, there's one key thing.
Oh, tell us.
First line leadership. First line leadership is where you get the leverage, because if we talk about sales leaders, for example, as a first line leader, you've got 5-8 people reporting into you. Guess where those people go when they're going through that first bit of learning, which is the conscious incompetent, the bit that is like, oh, I'm trying it, Alex. Grant, you said that I should do this, or Mark, you asked me to pitch this value prop. I tried it and it didn't work. It's like, how many times have you tried it? Well, once. And it's like, it's like, I remember when I learned to ride a bike. Bless my parents, they're wonderful. They put the bike on grass, right, nice and soft. They put the stabilizers on, right, so I couldn't really fall off. What they hadn't thought about was the fact that it was at the top of a slope, and at the bottom of the slope was a big concrete wall.
Oh.
Guess what happened? I
Bam.
hit the wall. Didn't fall off, but I hit the wall.
Hard.
But but it didn't stop me, because I got back on the bike. And the reality is, when you're driving behavioral change, it is very natural for us as human beings, when we do something for the first time, for it to feel uncomfortable. And that is a part that we have to go through in order to get consciously competent and start to lose that, that scary bit.
Yeah.
Scared, so what, right? It's brilliant, because you have to embrace that moment of discomfort to get to the better place and transform, whether you're a caterpillar or whatever you might be. But as a leader, leading through and with your first line is fundamental to any transformation project.
Yeah.
Because those are the people that will be coaching day to day. Those are the people that will be coming back, on the comments of, Mark, I tried it and it didn't work. Right. And how you engage your organization to deal with those moments of discomfort is really, really, really important. And anytime I've failed on a transformation is because I've been less thoughtful than I should have been about preparing my front line exhaustively. When I've done that, it usually works.
Yeah. So just before we move on, there's someone's commented, and it says LinkedIn user. We can't see your name, so feel free to drop your name in the chat as well. But someone's saying hi, and they've come across the live button, and they're all ears. So great for you to join us.
We're seeing you, Andy.
So with that in mind, Andy, first line leaders, what are some of the highest leveraged sort of coaching behaviors that first line leaders can adopt during change? What do you look for? What do you think is the most important thing for them?
I think there are a number of tenets there, right? The first off is, why are we looking to affect the change? What is the purpose of this transformation? How does what is the value at the different levels? What is the value to the customer? Right. So often we think about our own organization, but come on, we're here to actually drive outcomes. Grant, you mentioned it before, right? The job of my sales team globally is to drive outcomes for our customers. We need to understand those outcomes explicitly. Mark, you talked about this. We need to understand what their executives care about. We then need to help very clearly understand the part that we can play as an enabler and as an accelerator of those outcomes. And then we need to communicate where they are today versus where they could be tomorrow, and why they might want to change that. Command of the message is a great framework for having those types of discussions. But it really starts with understanding, why are we making this change? How does it serve the different stakeholders that we are seeking to serve, internal and external? And then grounding people in that higher level purpose. Before then breaking it down into very discrete, structured tasks that help people go through that transformation, caterpillar to butterfly. I think it's a beautiful analogy.
And thank you. And you know what you just described as well too. Earlier, you're talking about Maslow's laws of competency and consciousness, and so many of us live there in the unconscious ignorance. And there's nothing wrong with that. The words sound terrible, but it's just reality. You can't change anything until you become competent that you don't know how to do it. And the last part, what you said, is even more important. If Simon Sinek does a lot of work on this, starting with why, and we
Mm.
miss this as leaders. You know, if you, it's the center of the bullseye. It's the why, the what, and the how, as you rightfully described. Too many leaders go straight for the what and the how, and you haven't even answered the why yet to the person. And in my work in personal change management is we leave out the perception, and we fail. I do this all the time. I do this all the single time, and we look at trying to teach people about what do you see, and I put up pictures of things that people see, and it always goes towards the negativity when actually you can't see the positives that are actually there. And so perception, as a leader, what I'm giving to you, how I think you're receiving it is my perception, but how you're perceiving it is completely different. And often, as you've just rightfully articulated, sometimes we need to stop and slow down and just articulate, why are we doing this? What's the purpose of the transformation itself, so that people can actually go, oh, I get it. And then get past that to say, okay, now what's the how? And they'll look to you as the boss, right?
Yeah. And one thing, if I can build on that, and again, I'm very conscious that my voice is dominating a lot of this. So
as it should be, you're our guest.
Thank you. A really important part that we haven't touched on in depth yet is about creating psychological safety.
Yes.
As a leader, I must engender an environment where people can give me the bad news at about 3.5 times the pace of giving me the good news.
Yeah.
Bad news must travel faster. And the good news is that bad news is always an opportunity to learn. What didn't we get quite right? How could we try things differently? And I fundamentally believe, as an organization, if you're not making errors, you're probably not pushing the envelope. You're staying in the safe zone. And we need to be in that next zone of change and learning. But that's really hard to do where people feel unsafe about admitting they don't know, unsafe about taking the brave step of trying something new for the first time. Yeah. And so as leaders, as we talk about transformation, we've talked about many principles, but one of the most important things is creating that psychological safety so that people can give feedback. Because guess what? When we go with that new value proposition out to market, again, it's the 150 people, 200, 300 people in the sales organization that are getting the feedback from the customer. And you need to hear that feedback as a leader to orientate and self-correct as you go forward.
Yeah.
Powerful.
So I want to move the conversation towards communication, because that's also an important theme for us. But again, before we do, just wanted to say hi, Loic Gaucher. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but thanks for joining and for your comments. And also Sue. I don't know if you want to pop Sue's comment on the screen there.
There you go.
Grant.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
The parable of the blindfolded people feeling different parts of an elephant is a good example of contextual perception in change and how often we don't consider this. I love this. Sense making is very powerful for this, and absolutely correct. You're so right, Sue. And I think, you know what, as I'm listening to Andy, what he's very much articulating is a leadership style that I would want to work with. So Andy, I don't know how fast Atlassian is growing, but if there's opportunities, bring me along, bring Alex, and bring Mark, and bring Sue. I think we might like to work with you.
We are always looking for brilliant people. Always, right? Because that's how we deliver results.
Yeah.
Very good.
Good. So communication. So as leadership scope expands, communication complexity increases. What works at team level doesn't always scale. So what changes as the transformation increases, the complexity increases when it comes to communication?
I would say that the amount and importance of communication increases exponentially as the task of change increases in complexity or scale.
Yeah.
So to put it another way, the bigger the change
Mhm.
across whatever dimension you want to measure, complexity, size, scale, geography, the more you need to be looking at the communications, not just the initial communications, but the feedback loops as you go through. And as you start to have different layers of management between the leader and the front line, that becomes really challenging.
Yeah.
But again, as a leader, you can do really simple things. And one of the things I continue to do and will continue to do as I get further into my role here at Atlassian is to do skip levels, right? One of the things I took a very deliberate decision on in my first 5 weeks was to travel 4 weeks to different parts of the globe so that I could be in person with my salespeople in their QBRs. Right? What better place to learn? And so I think, communication is a really, really important factor that needs to be very closely thought about as you go from sort of team to organizational change.
Yeah. And are there any things that you've had to unlearn about communication as your leadership scopes expanded?
I'm sure there are. I'm certainly I'm not the individual that I was 10 or 20 years ago. I think one of the things that I've tried really, really hard to do is to continue to be humble, right?
Yeah.
And actually, it's so tempting. As you get experience, right? Experience is really about pattern matching. But it's really dangerous because actually, the more patterns you've seen, the quicker you are to say, oh, I've seen this before. Oh, Grant, you need to do this. And actually, that's the biggest mistake in the world as a leader. So one of the things I continually have to do, and by the way, this is not just work, this is at home with kids and what have you, is to resist the urge to give the answer. Because sometimes all people want is to be heard and to get some empathy. My wife tells me this all the time. It's like, darling, I don't want the answer. I just want you to listen.
Yeah. Right. Right. It's so powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful.
Yeah, it really is. And I think all the points that we're talking here, especially the ones you just went through, Andy, as leaders to our revenue teams, we also need to help them to be leaders to our customers and prospects because they're all going through this as well. Yeah. Right. And especially in technology, if you're leading the way with new features, new functionality, new paradigms, you may have somebody who is receiving your message. They're nodding their head a lot. They think this is the most wonderful thing. But what they're not sharing is that they're afraid of what you're talking about. They're afraid of the change that's coming. How do they incorporate it into their organization, so on and so forth. So being good leaders at every level in the revenue organization is important because we need that leadership and the trust building with our customers and prospects, just like we do within our own organization. So a lot of the themes that we've been talking about here apply to the frontline seller, the frontline customer success person, the marketer who has to write the messaging, right? It's all about helping with that transformation across the board.
Yeah. So I'm conscious of time. And we haven't got to growth and development yet. So I'm going to recommend that we invite Andy back and we do a session on growth and development because it's such an important topic.
Absolutely. I would love that. I think that's going to be great. We've got some really great feedback and lessons learned here from Andy today. So Andy, would you be willing to come back with us?
I'd be delighted to.
Yeah. Okay, so given everything we've discussed, culture, coaching, communication, what becomes non-negotiable for revenue leaders now, especially given the exponential rate of change we're experiencing with AI? And that's an open question. I'd love to hear everyone's perspective. But Andy, do you want to have a stab at that?
I think one of the non-negotiables for me is humility. Right, I come back to some of the things that I've talked about rather than introduce new ideas, but some of the things I've talked about Our job as leaders is not to be the smartest person in the room. Our job as leaders is to understand that we create the environment in which our culture grows, and the small behaviors that we demonstrate every day are actually the big ones when it comes to building trust. And so, the non-negotiable for me is how I choose to turn up for my people every single day. And Alex, you will remember this. I always talk about working with people. People work with me. They never work for me. And it's such a small word, but to me, it goes right to the heart of who I am.
Yeah.
As a leader, I am here to serve my organization and the people that I'm entrusted to lead. And how I turn up for them every single day is non-negotiable.
Absolutely.
So important.
I 100% agree with that. And I thank you for that. Sue here had said another C, another two, curiosity and critical thinking. I'm going to throw into that, Sue, as well, something that Andy said earlier, and that is vulnerability. And there's a reason why I say that, because the science and psychology will back up. This is not popular, but the evidence is there that being vulnerable invites trust so much more than transactional leadership. And think about that for a moment. Vulnerability as a leader, willing to show a little bit of yourself and who you are, willing to invite people in. You're in charge of how much. But if you understand that 76% of our lives is lived in transactional leadership, you have to understand this as a leadership foundation. What does that mean? It means as a transactional leader, you are telling. It's a foundation of telling people what to do. Military is a great example of that. You've got to tell and deliver orders, right? But transformational leadership is harder because it's a little bit about letting go. But as Andy said earlier, coaching is the main mechanism. And so in a proper coaching environment, that's where you're inviting ideation, you're inviting co-creation, you're actually doing and facilitating the transfer of ownership. When your employee gets to have that moment of critical reflection and comes up with the idea themselves, when they walk away, that's the transfer of ownership. So the best thing that can happen is when they go do it and say, it worked, boss. Andy, I did it the way you said it. Actually, I didn't say it. You did it in that moment. Congratulations. Can you replicate that and keep going? But if it doesn't work, the best thing we can do is go right back into that coaching moment. It's going to be so easy for you transactionally to tell them what to do, but you've got to resist that and come back and say, what do you think you could do differently? And how would you do that? And what do you need from me? So these are great, narratives of must-dos. And I thank you for Sue. I thank you very much for Andy to bring this leadership to life. All these great discussions. It's powerful, very powerful.
Yeah. Mark, I don't know if you had a thought you wanted to share before we close off.
Yeah, I would say, it's leading by example, and, when you ask your team to learn, when you ask your team to do, role play and mock presentations, you should do it yourself, and if everybody's going to stand up at a QBR and do their role playing, guess what? I'm going to be the first one up there to do my role play. And I want the same critical feedback from the team that I would be giving, from a learning perspective. If it's some type of cold outreach, demonstrate you can pick up a phone and do some cold outreach if that's what's needed to a customer to solve a problem. But you have to be able to demonstrate that you're leading by example and doing anything you would ask anybody else to do.
Yeah. Great.
There's a great final one I just got to show. Lewis posted this as a closing comment, I think. Takeaways for me around trust, importance enabling frontline managers so they can coach their teams, situational leadership. Your job isn't to be the smartest person in the room. This is summarizing Andy. It is to ask the questions and let people be heard in the communication to come of servant leadership, how you choose to turn up, and finally, you work with. I think this is just so wonderful. Thank you so much, Lewis and Sue and everybody for your participation. This is great. Yeah. Any final thoughts, Andy or Alex?
Well, I was just going to say thank you. Thank you, Andy, personally. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks to the audience for the great engagement, and to Mark and Grant.
Thank you very much. Any final words, Andy?
I'd be delighted to come back.
Yay.
Wonderful.
Passionately
Let's set
about,
the date.
I feel passionately about trying to give back to the community that's helped me grow as a leader. And I do that, as I say, with the greatest humility. I may not always have the answers, but I do have questions, and I'm happy to share some of the experiences that I've had and the mistakes I've made. And if that helps others on their journey, my job is done.
Wonderful. That's absolutely brilliant. Andy Champion, thank you so much for being here with us on the show today. Mark Sabatini as well. It's great to have you as always, my co-host, and Alex Abbott. Thank you for being here with us. I'm Dr. Grant Van Albrick for the Dr. Grant Show. We are all about sales transformation, leadership, coaching, and change. If you've liked this show, please bookmark us. We will record this. It has been recorded. We'll share it again on LinkedIn so you can like and share with your friends who missed it. Follow along with us. I've put Andy's LinkedIn in the chat. So, Andy, you might get some connections there because people definitely want to come work with you and your teams. And also be sure to follow along with Alex, Mark, and myself. Thanks so much for joining us and have a wonderful day.
Bye all.